When did you realize the good old days have passed? I'm currently in the good old days. I'm trying to cherish and hold on to each day as it passes because I know I will look back on this time in my life with great fondness. When I couldn't drive to my friend's house anytime I wanted, and can only talk to them over the internet now. When I had a child. Don't get me wrong, I would die for this boy. I have a new, awesome D&D group I play with after a 20-year hiatus from the game. Amazing wife. Great friends. But I have this countdown to the end of life feeling that pervades my thoughts since he came around. In the movie Interstellar, the protagonist says now, "We're just here to be memories for our kids." I feel that bone deep. The moist brevity of the past felt so much potential. Now I feel that my job is to be part of my son's potential. It's humbling. And scary. They never existed in the first place. I became disabled. When I had to get a job and could not just sit around waking and baking and hanging with my dog while drinking chocolate milk mixed with a peanut butter spoon every day. At the risk of sounding lame, I had 3 internet buddies that I more or less spent my entire teenage years hanging with. We all met in a text-based role-play board that is now non-existent. There was a pretty big network of us from that site, but the 4 of us were always tight. MSN, and later Skype. Chats that would last 6+ hours a day. We would involve each other in various RPs. We played D&D over chat. My favorite tradition was movie night. We would all pirate the same film and then sync our viewings of it, hanging out to chat while we watched together. We shared our ridiculous teenage dramas, talked about our plans for the future, played video games occasionally. I think for a while, we were each other's only support. We fought occasionally, always ended up friends again. This went on for years and it was wonderful. But then one day I realized it had been months since any of us really talked. No one had time. Nobody was really interested anymore. One by one, our little circle of friends fell apart and it breaks my goddamn heart. I don't know where they are right now. Yup. After you get out of college, everyone close to you moves away or is too busy with their own lives. It's just part of growing up. Then you settle into a life of working and paying bills to survive and you realize this is your new life. 41, and still having a mostly great time at life. When I realized it's been over 2 years since my entire group of friends all sat down and had a night to hang out together, we've all drifted apart compared to how close we were and, except for 2 friends, don't talk nearly as much. Good old days have been long gone. It happens. Doesn't mean you can't make good days with new people. When you think about the past and reminisce how good it was constantly. I just miss growing up in a big-ish country town in the 90s. My days as a child consisted of playing PlayStation and Sega, watching MA and R-rated VHS movies that Mum hired out for us. This is always the biggest reason why I'm a huge horror buff and just being a kid with scraped knees, who played video games but who also went with a group of neighborhood kids to explore the bush and climb stuff we weren't meant to, taking my Barbies outside with my sister and making fairy wings and costumes for them out of leaves and both coming with weird stories straight out of our imaginations. Friday night rollerblading at the recreation center, neighbors having Saturday night parties where everyone in the street were invited. Shit, I'd say early 2000 to 2010 were pretty great too. Then it didn't so much go downhill but it certainly went nowhere. The good old days. When I don't wake up happy anymore and I don't know what to do with myself besides sit there and be useless. When I realized how much I can't afford. When my older siblings moved out of home, about 6 or 7 years ago, just hasn't been the same since. I know they had to move on with their lives, but I miss having them around. It gets so lonely when it's just me and Mom. Dad is either at work or can't be bothered to engage with family most of the time. When my mom died, everything I knew went downhill afterwards. When I fell off that couch. Context. When I was younger I used to like tightrope walk along the edge of the couch. You know, the board that holds the front on. Well, around 28 years of age I was doing just this. just casually walking, and the next thing I knew I was on the floor with my ribs in immense pain. My now wife, trying to hold back laughter, but still very concerned, asked if I was okay. I had blacked out for just long enough to fall, hit the floor, and try to grasp what just happened, maybe 3 seconds. I survived with a fair amount of pain for the next month. But to this day me and my wife still refer to the day I fell off the couch as the day I became an old man. When Christmas and Halloween stopped being as magical as they used to be. Never. There's always tomorrow. When I realized that there were no good old days and I was just too young to notice everything sucked. When microtransactions took over video games. I struggled in many ways in college, but I found a group of friends who I love more than anyone in the world. We would go out to the bars constantly together. We had one last bar night before they moved across the country, and I knew that was the end of an era. When I sat down at my family table around the holiday and noticed empty seats where loved ones used to sit, my dad's spot at the head of the table and my brother's spot beside him. My aunts and uncles always dropped in later on holidays, but now their spots are empty too. My best friend normally ate with us since his folks were split up. Now all their seats are empty. I have plenty of good days ahead of me, but it's hard to not be sad that they're all gone. Today was one of those days. I went to the baptism of the son of one of my closest friends since high school. It was the moment when I saw him with the baby on his hands that made me look around. I could also see the 4-year-old kid daughter of another HS friend. It was at this moment that it hit me. The people I've been seeing since HS doing stupid stuff before. Talking shit non-stop on my room every day. Mom would even let them inside if I was not home. We stayed up until sunrise just playing games, drinking, or whatever, and to see those guys with a steady job, family, I don't know, life does hit you like a ton of bricks sometimes. When meeting old school friends I was inseparable from, only to spend most of the time in awkward silence because you have almost nothing in common anymore. I don't think it's necessarily sad, but it does make me long for the past. Nostalgia always colors memories. Anise Rose. I was 11. My mom told the man she's been with for 11 years that she's been having an affair. I was playing in the closet during this time and came out after she left to see the man I called Dad weep. Later she told me he wasn't my biological father. When Christmas didn't feel special anymore. When your childhood is over and now you have responsibilities. The terminal brain cancer diagnosis pretty well kicked my ass, but I didn't die today, and I probably won't die tomorrow either. When my mom doesn't sing me to sleep anymore. Whenever I feel like I'm having one of those rare but timeless nights with my friends, I like to tell myself, you know what? This is the good old days. It's the best thing I've ever done for myself. I am newly 52, never had too many good days in my youth, but I remember the thing that made me realize it was time to grow the up. Sitting at a bar in New Jersey just drinking as I always did. I got up and danced to the music, just like I always did, because alcohol just turned me into a dance like nobody is watching kind of person. I stumbled back to the bar counter to ask for another glass of wine when the bartender, one of my good friends for a few weeks prior to this event all the way to his passing in 2014, just held my hand and told me he wanted to show me something when I sober up and that I should sleep in the break room like I usually did when I drank all night and didn't have work after. He helps me onto the couch and then I pass out drunk. I wake up a few hours later with a really bad hangover and I just started rolling a joint to ease the symptoms so I can get back to drinking, like I always did. The bartender was standing over me. He had woken me up because he watched me piss myself on the couch. His brother was the owner and they both knew me really well, so me sleeping there wasn't anything new. Sometimes he'd have supervision and sometimes I wouldn't. He stayed at the bar for the lunch shift checking up on me and woke me up after lunch rush for the restaurant had calmed down. I didn't even realize I was covered in piss. I had puke in my hair, the weed all fell on the floor, and one of my heels was really sticky for some reason. I was obviously annoyed, upset, and embarrassed. The bar had an accident bin where it was just random old sweatpants, cheap flip-flops, and huge t-shirts in case anyone made a mess on themselves or didn't feel comfortable walking home drunk in a mini dress. Standing there, almost 30, wearing clothes donated to a bar because I pissed on my friend's couch, hungover as shit, was one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. I asked him to drive me home and he said he would after the surprise from earlier that I had forgotten about. They had a huge box full of beer bottles and wine bottles and other various liquor bottles. Seriously, it was almost overfilling. They said it was my total consumption over the past 2 months and I broke down in tears. I wasn't the cute fun-loving girl in her 20s who just liked to get tipsy with her friends once a week. I was an adult woman who ran away from my old life to be a pathetic drunk. The old life wasn't good at all, but I didn't give up everything for that to be the end result. I realized I was no longer a kid. I didn't have my parents to blame, or my ex-boyfriends, or the shit that went down in Arizona. Nobody made me an alcoholic. I let myself become one. Now I have liver cancer, so I guess it serves me right. But when I met my now husband not long after this event, it truly made me realize that I needed to grow up. I was not a girl. I was a grown woman who needed to get her shit together. Thankfully I did, and I've been sober for so long, but you truly don't notice how bad some habits can be until it's far too late to avoid the consequences. It was like someone crashed through this wall in my head that was holding onto this teen dream idea of what a 21-year-old girl does to have a good time. I wasn't the nearly 30-year-old who was wasting everything she worked for until that moment. I was not young anymore. I couldn't bounce back from these hangovers anymore. I was embarrassed to think about my drunk dancing in empty bars at 6 a.m. and I was really afraid of what I had done to my body. My past combined with the weed and my age gave me a slight sense of invincible almost. I survived so far. Why not another drink? So glad I got out of that headspace and grew up. If my daughters acted how I did as a teenager or young adult, I don't think I'd ever stop begging them to change for their own sake. When I found out my dad hung himself. When I realized I hadn't went to class laughing my ass off in a while. I haven't yet. Now is the best time of my life. I remembered when I was young and my friends and family weren't assholes. When all my friends had kids and now all we talk about is their kids and all we do is kid-friendly stuff, and even when I ask them to have a gals evening sometimes they ask to bring a +1 aka the older kid for some fun mom-kid time, like can we please not? This. I am the only one in my longtime friend group from high school without children. I have basically removed myself from most get-togethers at this point. It is not that I hate kids at all, I really enjoy children. I've simply elected to not have them at this time, possibly never. The conversations always end up 100% revolving around kids. I don't mind it for the first hour or two catching up on how the kiddos are doing, but after that it is too much. Next subject. Please. Don't beg me to come out for a girls' night to get away from the kids, to only talk about your kids the entire time. One of these times I should just talk about my cats for 3 hours or the recent poop my husband took so they get it. I have realized it for a while now, coming up on the 10-year anniversary since my best friend passed away. When the sadness lasts longer than an hour. Last night when I locked the door of my foreclosed-on house for the last time, lived there my whole life. Gray hair and started to forget things. When you see your parents aging, or realize mom can't solve your problems for you anymore. Sometimes, when shit hits the fan, I feel like a little girl again and I curl up in the fetal position and cry for mom. I'm 30. When I felt the need to talk to someone, and realized I had no one to turn to. For me, the good old days are at different times. I think I'm living in a form of the good old day right now. I won't realize it until this period of my life or my circumstances change. A favorite quote of mine. That's the thing about the present. Live stoically, people. Love stoically. When I stopped having motivation for the things that I used to love and enjoy, such as gaming or watching movies more often, I don't really do either much anymore, and it's saddening how I simply do not have the motivation for them, and I seem incapable of finding such motivation again. This'll most likely be buried down, but at least I can admit and realize that such things just seem to pass me by without even realizing they had. There's a great quote by Andy Bernard from The Office: "I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them." When my grandma's house was sold, then she got dementia, and passed this June in 2019. I am still living a happy life. But I got to make sure my mind doesn't wander too far. I don't like thinking about it. Her death almost made me tear up. What's worst is that she once said that she wanted to reach 100. She could have become a great grandmother, but she passed 30 years before 100. She also could have reached her next birthday had she lived one more week. Looking back at the years of 2009 to 2011, man, those were the best times of my life. As someone who graduated college in 2009 during that recession, those are some of the most difficult years so far. When there's barely anyone playing your favorite online video games anymore, when you and your best friends don't have much to talk about anymore, when your favorite show aired its last episode years ago, when companies, franchises you used to like don't put out good stuff anymore,